This right here is what keeps me coming back.
All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. Tonight, you can see I'm running all alone today. Andy couldn't make it tonight, unfortunately. I'm sure he is really missing out on this one, but he's got some family stuff to tend to, which we have zero arguments with. But tonight, we have on a special guest, Mr. Siemens. And for many of you who may not know, if you don't, you probably live under a rock. But if you've been on YouTube just a little bit, you've probably seen his YouTube channel, his absolute wizard behind the camera. So, of course, we're going to talk about that tonight. If you watched the 39 Hours episode, you've definitely seen him in there catching any species under the sun. But we're going to get him on here to talk tonight. We got him queued up under here. What is going on, man? How are you?
Man, your intro got me pumped up on kayak fishing. It's like snowing outside right now, and I just saw that the kayak commercial. I'm like, oh man, our open water season's like coming to an end. Like it's end times. Like, yeah, we're gonna be walking on ice pretty soon.
Yeah, it's a little bit too late to get into the yak.
That's what people have asked me. They said, how late would you consider kayak fishing? And I'm like, well, I would still kayak fish now, but I would definitely be in a floater suit or a life jacket for sure.
1000%. Yeah, as soon as there's ice out, I'll be out in the yak. I was out there today in 39 degrees and rain and freezing my butt off. But if you're still catching them, it's worth it. But
yeah, exactly.
You've had some pretty cool episodes. I believe you're in a new canoe, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
I think you had it was just one of your videos was like just ice out. I think you're throwing like a Ned rig.
Yeah, that was early this year, and I was like looking for somewhere I could fish, and there was a small lake that I knew was like half open when I drove past. I'm like, well, I'll try dropping my kayak in it, and sure enough, I was breaking ice, and I only caught one smallmouth the entire time, but it was a big one, so it was fun. Yeah. I mean, I just got into kayak fishing, 2 years ago, and where I live, there's so many small lakes that don't have boat ramps that as long as you get your truck close to it, I can, my kayak, by the time I put a trolling motor on it and everything else, it's kind of like a boat, but it's a lot of fun.
I hear you there. Yeah, I got the comments today because I had 12 rods behind me that someone's like, isn't it just easier to get a boat? And I'm like, I would like a boat. I would love a boat. But at the same time, I'm broke and I don't have to pay gas money. So
the entry to get into kayak fishing is just, I can see why it's gaining popularity so much. It's because for a couple grand, you can have a fantastic kayak and you can be fishing big water on it. As long as you're smart about it, there's a lot of potential. So,
100%. Yeah, you don't have different insurance expenses, gas, trailer. You don't have to worry about that. But at the same point in time, the bass boat is totally the goal here. But we're gonna enjoy the kayak life while we're in it. But
exactly.
But dude, before we get too deep into the podcast, first off, thank you for taking the time.
Hey, no problem.
Appreciate it. And man, I want to throw it back. I want to go back to your first fish catch. What did you catch? Because I know anybody listening knows that you're a big multi-species guy. So I want to first learn, what was the first species you caught? Who introduced you to it and the whole story?
Oh, man. I would say the first – I cannot remember specifically my first fish, but it was probably with my grandpa. And it was probably my family used to rent a cabin every year on Big White Shell Lake, which is in eastern Manitoba. And they rented that same cottage for like 30 years. And my grandpa is kind of the one who got me into fishing. And he was old school. Anything he caught, he ate. And 95% of his fishing was trolling a 5 of diamonds or a red and white daredevil spoon. And that's what he did. And he'd catch walleye, he'd catch pike. And those are some of my first fishing memories is with grandpa. And, my dad liked to fish, but I think he just fished more over the years because I kind of asked him to drag me out. So definitely my grandpa and some of those memories, were pretty instrumental in hooking me.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet, dude. What I gotta ask, just because I'm such a bass guy, I'm such a bass head. But when was that first smallmouth?
Sorry, say that again.
When was the first smallmouth, if you can remember?
Oh man, that was probably like 13 or 14 was my first smallmouth, somewhere in there. But I didn't start, really targeting him till till later, and probably only really started fishing like bass tournaments when I was 15 or 16 sort of thing. So once I started fishing tournaments, then all of a sudden bass fishing got a lot more serious. So
I'm surprised that it was that late into your teens that you ran into a small, because I feel like if you're fishing for perch or pike or anything like that, you're gonna run into one.
Well, yeah, they're not as widespread actually. I don't think in Northwest Ontario where I live now, they're in all of the lakes, but in Manitoba where I grew up fishing, unless they were stocked into a lake, they aren't really found naturally in too many lakes there. So
are smallmouth stocked up there, or are they
a lot of them are stocked. A lot of people don't realize that. There's actually a pretty cool story is right across Canada runs CN Rail, and in Kenora in the area I'm at, back in the day, they used to stock the lakes along the railway, and they had a train car that had bass fingerlings in it, and they would stock the lakes because you'll be fishing this lake and there'll be a train car that runs right parallel to the lake, and like back in the day they used to stock with smallmouth, and I was doing research on it because I thought it'd be a cool video project, and sure enough, there's like legit, stats on them stocking these lakes with smallmouth, and they take off. Though there's another lake in Manitoba, and there's a sign by the boat launch that says there was 40 smallmouth stocked here in 2002, and now there's thousands of smallmouth in that lake, and it started with like 40. So it's smallies can take off pretty well if they're stocked, and I mean they don't really stock them anymore, but back in the day they stocked a lot of lakes. So that's
crazy. Do you guys get much largemouth up there? And obviously
not too much. There's a handful of lakes, but I mean you got to go. If you go just a couple hours south of like Bemidji, Brainerd, that area, they all have largemouth, and people don't care about them as much. Up here, like there's smallmouth in every lake, and we don't care about them as much. But we love catching largies around here, and I think it's kind of like flip flops if you go north a little bit. I think people care about smallmouth. Yeah,
super interesting. So, is there a species you kind of put at the top of your list that you like to go after a little bit more than the rest?
I mean, I love the variety of doing a bit of everything. I really like musky fishing. That being said, I just have barely done any musky fishing this year, but I love the challenge of muskies. But I like doing everything, anything new. Put me on a new lake. Put me, if there's something new I can fish for. I love the variety of fishing, and I think that's why I like fishing for everything. It's just I don't want to get stuck doing the same thing again and again. I can't fathom how some people only fish for bass. I mean, that's how you get really good at it, but I could never do that.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because like I have that exact same mindset, but in the complete opposite, where it's if I'm not fishing for bass, like even if I'm up in the deer stand, I'm sitting there, I'm like, what are the smallmouth doing? What are the largemouth doing? Like I just go nuts about it. And I was fortunate this year that my brother and I both took bucks early, so now I can just fish for as much as I want until gun season. But
there you go.
I saw you just got a deer.
I did.
A video out, I think yesterday.
My first archery deer. It's something I had wanted to do, and our rifle season is actually really long here, so I could have gone to the blind with a rifle, and I was like, no, I want to make this happen with my bow. So, we could shoot either a doe or a buck, and I went to the blind, and it was like less than 45 minutes, and a doe walked out. I'm like, well, same thing you said. It's like, well, if I tag out now, then I can get back to fishing. So, I mean, there might be a point in my life where I'm gonna stick it out for a big buck, but I was like, yeah, this is not that point in my life right now, and no, it's good. Don't want to get too fussy right away. It's still all new to me. That was only my fourth deer I've ever shot, so it's not like I've been hunting since I've been 15. I've been fishing since I was really young, but only got into hunting like 3 years ago. So
yeah, well, congratulations nonetheless, and filling the freezer.
Exactly.
There's no argument against it. So
yeah,
congratulations nonetheless. But
thank you.
So I'm curious. So obviously, everyone who knows of you or knows you personally knows that you're big into photography and videography, filming, editing.
My camera, you're sitting in the back there.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if that's what that was because I just see it just shelves.
It kind of looks like a black blob, but that's like, yeah. If our house burned down, that would be the rack I would be grabbing first. That and the hard drive. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can see some of the lenses now that you mentioned it. I can see a little bit, but. So these masterpieces that you create, when did this all start? When did your passion or interest, I should say, in camera work, when did it begin? Why?
Well, when I was 15 or 16, even before that, when I got more and more hardcore into fishing, it was always like, you want to have a great picture. And this was even before social media. It was just like, I want a good picture to print out. And then, when Facebook became a thing and social media, I mean, let's be honest, we all want a great picture of our fish, right? I don't care who you are. You want to have a good picture. You spent all this time, chasing this 50-inch musky or whatever it might be. You want a good picture. So like as that progressed, I always want to get a better picture. And then at the same time, I started working at fishing lodges. So you're just taking lots of pictures of your guests' fish, and you're always surrounded by beautiful settings and stuff. And that's kind of where I started getting the bug. And it was just strictly taking pictures of fish, just people holding fish, nothing beyond that. And then in my graduating year of high school, my parents got me a Canon Rebel, like a DSLR, one where you could change the lenses. And that was a huge step up from just the point and shoot camera, right? So I just started taking some like photography jobs. I don't know if it was that point or a year or two later where I shot my first wedding. And anyone who has ever shot a wedding before knows it's like the most stressful thing you can ever do. But it's also like it's a great way to build your skill set, because you have these like crazy brides, and you have, that being said, I've been very lucky for not having crazy brides, but you have these high stress situations, and you're taking like 3,000 pictures a day. There's 100 eyeballs watching you. Everyone's watching the photographer, making sure that he's got it under control. So like started shooting weddings, and at this point I still wasn't into video yet. It was still just photos. And then I didn't know what to do. I graduated from high school. I had that new camera, and I was like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And there's photography school in Winnipeg. And even though I didn't want to be a professional photographer, I was like, well, this is a 1-year course, and it was just to dive deep into digital photography. And I'm like, whatever happens at the end of this, it's a good skill to have, even if it's just a hobby. Right. So I enrolled in photography school and got accepted, got an apartment in Winnipeg, got my books and everything. And it was 3 days before school was supposed to start. And I was on a musky trip with my buddy Kevin. And my friend Aaron Weeb texts me up, and he's like, hey, do you want to, is it okay if I hop in the boat with you and fish with you today? And I was like, well, that's kind of weird, because Aaron normally always has an objective when he goes fishing. He never just hops in other people's boats. He's always like taking his boat, and it's his, plan or whatever's going on. So for him to just drive out for the day and randomly come fishing with us was a little out of character. So he fished with us for the day, musky fished all day. And then that night at the cabin, he pulls out his laptop, and he's like, I want to show you something. And he showed us this pilot episode for Uncut Angling. I don't even know if it was called Uncut Angling at that point. It was just a TV show or some sort of show he wanted to start. So he shows it on his laptop, and he's like, what do you think? I'm like, that was fantastic. And he's like, well, I don't have a cameraman. He's like, do you want to drop out of photography school and be my cameraman? And I'm just like, holy smokes. Literally 3 days before school is supposed to start. And I thought about it, and I think within like 2 days I made a decision. I told my parents, I'm like, this is such an opportunity, because I looked up to Aaron in the fishing world so much. We had fished together a bit, but I idolized him in the fishing world. And I was like, I need to take this opportunity. I'm like, and my parents were like, yeah, no, photography school will always be there if you want to go back. But yeah, that was the start of a crazy number of years, and I wouldn't have, done it any other way. But that's where it really started. That's where video kind of, consumed me. And I realized, I think at the start I might have thought that I wanted to be in front of the camera. But then once I started filming, I was like, I am so content just being the guy behind the camera. I didn't need to be in front of the camera.
Right.
So I was long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect. I find it super interesting how a lot of these guys that I've spoken to that are very talented with the camera, whether it be Adam Bartusik, who we mentioned prior, with Samuel Moore, or Kyle Van Dever, a lot of these guys, they don't have a lot of, education, official, whatever you want to call it, experience. They're going to get a camera, they get an opportunity, and they're jumping headfirst into it, and they learn as they go. And it's just because you guys have just creative minds. That's why it's so successful. And you're just not willing to put it down and give up on it. So it's pretty cool that you had that opportunity arise, because it's like, who knows what you'd be doing with it now? I mean, you might still be doing your personal stuff, but you might still be stuck with weddings. You might not be filming all these crazy big, outdoor adventures.
I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said for saying yes, especially when you're at the start of your career. And I just think, you want to soak up all the experience you can. And people ask me like, hey, Jay, what photography school should I go to? And I'm like, well, if you're driven, I think you should just, find whoever you aspire to be. If you want to, be the next Kyle or be the next Sam Moore, whoever that might be, like reach out to Sam and be like, hey, Sam, I want to shoot with you. Can I intern for you? Right. I think Sam's got an intern right now, and it's just like that intern is getting a crash course on all the things specifically he wants to learn. It's fishing, hunting, and he's shooting for, big clients and stuff, right? So I think that's amazing. I think, like, for example, the photography school that I was going to go to, one of the courses was darkroom photography, like developing film pictures, which I could not care less about. And that's what it would consumed, weeks of my life. And instead I was with Aaron Weed filming fishing and just learning on the fly, learning from YouTube videos whenever I needed to figure something out. And I think there's just endless resources online to learn if you want to, if you're willing to put in the work.
Right.
That being said, some people's school might be better, but I mean,
that's a great point. And I'd be horrible if I didn't shout out my boys Travis and Tanner Lyons, who are putting in work down south in Texas. Well, they're from Texas, but they're working all over the country and states. But they mentioned the same thing you just mentioned, being afraid to say yes. And they pretty much take every opportunity possible that they can to, obviously work, to gain experience, to get their name out there. And it's exactly what you just mentioned. I think that's pretty important because like you said, with photography school, you might waste, there might be a certain portion of that education that obviously you want to be a part of, you want to learn, but then the rest of it's like, it's not going to help you whatsoever. It's like every other college student here in the States that, wants to go for a certain major and has to take 75% of their courses that have nothing to do with their major, doesn't help them in life.
Exactly.
You might as well just take that opportunity and just learn experience focusing on just that portion that you're interested in. That's a great point. But for somebody that's, beyond just saying jumping into an endeavor, what kind of advice would you have for somebody who's kind of aspiring to maybe not just outdoor photography, but learn kind of skills behind a camera?
There's some saying like your first 10,000 pictures are going to suck, or 100,000 pictures or whatever. And it's just like, I look back at my stuff from 6-7 years ago and it's just like, holy smokes, what was I thinking? But I'm like, that's typical progression, right? And I think it's so easy to get discouraged because I look at stuff on Instagram, like pictures and videos, and you're seeing the best of the best. You know what I mean? When you see Kyle doing a Brandon Palaniuk edit, it's like he's creating some of the best fishing content out there. And it's just so easy to compare yourself. And I think that's the problem with social media. It's just like instantly you're like, oh, I want this to be like a Sam Moore film. And it's like, well, you don't know the hours he's put in. And he's also he's like one of the best of the best. So it's like, it's easy to get discouraged. And I think that's, bigger than just photography. I think that's just the dangers of social media in general. But I think, you got to be content with where you're at and realize that it's just a process to get there. Right.
Right. And I think
the cool thing is you can reach out to those people and you can ask them questions. Like I try to respond to every message, and I have no secrets with camera gear. It's just like, here's what I'm using. Here's what I'm doing. And I try to, teach on YouTube as well to give back, because I realize that's where I learned a lot of stuff too. So. Yeah,
100%. I think the same thing can be said for anglers, right? Yep. I mean, there's so many, at least speaking from the bass world, there's a lot of these anglers that are aspiring to say, be Elite Series pros or MLF pros, and they want to be like this guy. And you see a lot of these guys that want to be like somebody else, crash and burn, because they're trying so hard to be like somebody else and not developing their own skills, what their own confidence is.
Yeah.
When they might not be, they might try to be like someone else, but really their skills don't develop in that same way. That person had a different road than that person's taking. It's good to see, obviously you need to realize that person's at the level they are because of their road they take, but you got to take your own road, develop your own skills, because you're going to find your own niche, your own style, like especially when it comes to camera, you're going to have your own way of doing things.
Yep.
So that's a really good point. But I'm curious, when did you start the YouTube channel?
Oh, that was I'm just thinking about you asking me what my first fishing memory was. Like, I have such a brutal memory, and that's kind of part of the reason why I wanted to do a YouTube channel, is because I love having pictures on the hard drive. But what I love even more is having like video memories of stuff. It's like that fishing trip, or like I've been very fortunate to have, like, I filmed my proposal, and to be able to show that to my kids one day is just like going to be insane. I wish I could see my parents' proposal. I think that'd be the coolest thing ever. So just like, I selfishly just love having those memories for myself more than anything else. Like, there's a potential to turn into a business and all these other things. But I had shot for a lot of other clients, and I was like, you know what, love shooting with Aaron and everything else. And I was just like, you know what, I want to document some of my own trips. And I kind of saw potential to do some of that and to still shoot for clients. So like I probably right now, 70% of my time, my work is focused on just my own YouTube channel, and 30% is just the corporate work. But if the corporate stuff, I could always go back to doing the corporate stuff if I wanted to. But for now, I'm like, you know what, I'm loving the YouTube stuff. There's no deadlines. It's full creativity, and that's as an artist, that's what you want, right? You don't want any restrictions, right? So I can make a film as long as they're as short as I want, and yeah.
Right. Well, I have to say bravo on the proposal video, because my girlfriend was a huge fan of that.
Nice. So thank you. You know what? I shot a lot of weddings over the years, and I would always, when I would meet a couple, the first question would be oh, so what's your proposal story? And it'd be like, oh, he just proposed over dinner one night, or oh, we were just talking one evening on the couch, and he said we should get married. And I was just like, no, I want a better story than that. I want to make sure that like whatever I do, it's gonna be something ridiculous.
I'm gonna fly a drone while we're fishing.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen the video, maybe you can link it below, or if you look online and go to my profile. Essentially, my buddies, we detached a box underneath the drone, an Amazon box, and it flew over a boat when my wife and I, her girlfriend at the time, were fishing. This box came down, I cut it off, and the drone flew away, and we opened up the box, and it was the ring, and I proposed to her. But that was like terrifying. I had pool noodles inside of the box, because if the drone crashed, I did not want that ring sticking out. I was like already planning for it to crash, and I was just like, please don't crash, please don't crash.
I've seen some, I want to say it was on Barstool, of people trying to propose in the back of yachts or something like that, and they basically just drop the ring in the water. Yeah. I can totally see where your fear is coming from.
It was scary.
But nonetheless, it worked out great for you. You're obviously, are you married now, or are you still engaged?
No, I'm married. Been married for coming up on 2 years already. Crazy.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
2 years.
Everything was like last year.
Yeah, I know, and it just time flies. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congrats. Like a very belated congrats.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It's good. I got no complaints.
Yeah. One thing to talk, kind of adding on to the YouTube, that many would obviously have seen is 39 hours. And this was something I didn't actually realize was a thing until I believe either you posted it or I saw the second episode just pop up on my homepage of YouTube. And that concept was super cool, because when you would talk about different species and how, like, if you catch one species that's bigger than that, so if one team caught a certain species, the other team caught a certain species, but that species was heavier or longer,
then you still longer,
then they would steal it. And I thought that was super interesting. And I'm just curious, who was the brains behind this, and what was the idea that sparked?
So that was Aaron Weeb's baby. He had the idea. There's a series in Europe. It's called Fly versus Jerk, and I think they're actually filming a season right now. But basically, it was just a fishing competition with anglers spread across Europe, and it was a pike fishing competition. Mm-hmm. And they would all film their separate videos. It all got edited together, and they would release it in however many episodes it was. But Aaron started thinking about what about a multi-species contest like that? And so essentially the format is, the first season what we did was it was 39 hours straight. The clock started, you had 39 hours to catch as many species of fish as possible. And in order to get a point, it was the longest fish of a species. Teams could steal back and forth. Then, so season 1 happened probably 4 or 5 years ago. And Aaron did all that. He, it was his baby. He did all the editing. There was, I filmed one of the teams. I think there was a team in Saskatchewan, team in Manitoba, team in Ontario. And we didn't really know how it would go. And it kind of grew a little bit of a cult following, I guess you could say, after the first season.
Yeah.
And then, that was the most, if you go to one of Aaron's videos, Uncut Angling's videos, you would see when's the next 39 hours. That was a comment just nonstop on all of his videos. That's all people asked. When is season 2? When is season 2? And I was like, Aaron, what if I can help out with things, and my production team can help out with some of the shooting and the editing. And finally we're like, okay, I think it's a good time to do it. So we did season 2 dropped last winter, and It was wild. We changed a couple things. Instead of fishing a 39 hours straight, we split it into 3 13-hour days. So we actually had time to travel in between. Right. And that made for, I think, better fishing. Like we could get to more lakes. We didn't have to fish in the dark. But I forget how many species of fish were caught. It was
a lot.
Yeah, I can't even remember. Yeah, like over 30 species or something like that, or over 25 or something. It was pretty cool to see all those different fish caught, some that I didn't even know existed.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you mentioned fishing in the dark. I bet taking that variable out of it definitely made for a better production.
Oh, right? Totally. Yeah, exactly. No one wants to film or watch a video in the dark, right? So if we took that out, then, in hindsight, we thought that taking the night fishing would mean that people would sleep at night, but it kind of meant that people drove at night now just so they could get to as many areas as possible. So I think next time, if there is a next time, we would have I think it would be cool to have drivers. So we could be like, this is where we want to go and we could sleep and then they would drive. But I don't know if that's realistic either. People also like us to be tired and loopy as well. So
right. I'm sure you guys went into hibernation for a few days after that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty sweet. I mean, I know a lot of people, like myself included, obviously really enjoyed that episode. It was cool to not only see the different personalities fishing with each other. By the way, I don't think with Paul and Taro, I don't think I've ever laughed harder.
And Taro, everyone loves or hates Taro. Taro is just such a wild character, and they I don't know, sometimes you would swear Taro's the crazy one, but sometimes Paul might be the crazy one, and they're just like an old married couple. It's pretty funny.
It was perfect. Yeah. It was it was almost how I'd compare it was like watching Cy Robertson on a Duck Dynasty. Yeah. It was just it was clever genius is what it was. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I could speak for a lot of people that we thoroughly enjoyed that. But I'm hoping you guys are planning for another round of this.
It's tough to plan anything right now, with just, with social distancing type stuff, at least in Manitoba, and depending on the sponsors you have, there's some spot. I mean, you got to be careful, right? You should be social distancing, and if you can't do that in a video, and if some sponsors don't want to touch it, I mean, it's a very tough deal right now. It's not like it was a year and a half ago, and a production like that is quite expensive to put together when you have 4 or 5 cameramen, and it took 1,000 hours of editing last time, maybe more than 1,000 hours.
Wow.
Or one editor spent 1,000 hours on it, and Aaron and I both probably spent 100 or 200 hours on it. So right there, you're just it's a lot. It's a lot. So yeah, well, that's the question I've been asking. When's season 3? And I wish I had an answer, but kind of got to see how things pan out these next couple months, and because it's so much travel too, which isn't necessarily something that
you can do now.
Right now. So yeah, it's a tough deal.
Yeah, especially because the borders are still closed, I believe, right?
Borders still closed. It just got extended for another month, and the other part of this is, depending on how far you travel, it's just there's some certain quarantine rules depending on where you're at. If in Canada, if I want to go for a shoot somewhere, I have to, if it's international, I have to quarantine for 14 days when I come back. Or even fishing. My buddy Jeff Gustafson fishes the elites, and when he comes back from tournaments, he used to lock himself away from his wife for 14 days once he comes back. And it's if my livelihood depended on it, would I quarantine for 14 days? Yes, but I'm I don't know if I'll go out of my way to quarantine for 14 days. I don't want to sit in my office for 14 days. So
man, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew the Canadian boys when they came home. I didn't know they actually quarantined from their families. That's pretty wild.
Yeah. You can't. You have to essentially stay in your wherever you're staying.
Grief. Yeah. That's brutal. It kind of goes to show what those guys go through, man. The things they'll sacrifice to live out their dreams.
Oh man, I was lucky enough to film with Brandon Palaniuk at a couple tournaments, and I loved it. And huge props to what he does. But if I was told that I could fish all the elites next year, I don't think I would. It's not always crazy fishing. Even the last tournament, the one that just wrapped up yesterday, it's just some of these lakes are so tough. They a lot of the guys didn't even catch 5 fish a day. They're catching 2 fish a day. I'm these are the best anglers in the world, and they're catching 1 or 2 fish. I'm that doesn't sound fun at all.
It was a very, very, we had Wes Logan on for Monday Night Live last night, and he got 14th place, and it was brutal. You're the guy who got second place, Mike Huff, who proud to have had him on the show as well. And he was talking to us a little bit. He only caught 3 fish the first day, and he got second place overall.
That's wild. That
rarely happens ever.
That should not happen, yeah.
Right. And especially on, Lake Chickamauga, which is renowned to be one of the greatest lakes ever for bass fishing. Like you just mentioned, it's very tough. But like that lifestyle, it's very hard to have a family and grow, like actually be able to raise your children and be able to successfully be on or be a part, like have that lifestyle to compete at that level. It's very difficult, but that's why you see these certain people, these certain teams, I guess we could call them, be successful, like the Polnicks. Like his team of Kyle, his girlfriend, how they travel, the way they operate. That's what you need to be successful at that level consistently.
But it's insane. Like when he drives a massive motorhome, and they have 2 huge pickup trucks. He drives the camper, and she tows a 20-foot bass boat, which I don't know. My wife would not feel comfortable towing a 20-foot bass boat down the interstate in the United States.
It takes a lot of
driving, right?
Yeah,
it's a group effort. He gives her props all the time, which is super cool. But she's like without her, I don't know how he'd pull everything off.
He would be lost. Yeah, he would be lost 100%. I'm still learning how to confidently operate a trailer, so huge props to her.
Yeah,
she learned that quick, and she does it incredibly. So but it's been said often, guys, that fish for a living have a good network behind them. Yeah, and that's super important. And obviously, you have your network, and that's why you can do what you do so successfully. Absolutely. So props there. But I'm curious, man, with what you're doing now. Are you living your dream, or is there something that you're still aspiring to reach or accomplish? Or
I don't know, that your questions gave me tingles, because it's like, I'm absolutely living my dream. I'm just so grateful. It's just, I'm in a position where I can, if I want to make YouTube videos, I can make YouTube videos, and if I want to shoot for client stuff, I've been very, very blessed to have some client work come in, and that I'm able to, like I said at the start, I was kind of shooting a bit of everything. You'd shoot weddings, even if weddings weren't your favorite thing. They're money makers. But now I'm able to shoot with, some outdoor companies that I really enjoy shooting it. Like, they send you lures, and they're like, hey, get some walleye and some bass shots. And then it's the dream, right? And then other times it's like, okay, I want to make some YouTube videos, and here's some ideas I have. And to be able to do that stuff and just have that freedom is amazing. I think there's potential to, have influence as well too. So like trying to be a good influence with YouTube videos, like teach people fish handling, that's something that I really try to stress in my videos, is just like the fish shouldn't be out for more than 30 seconds. And I watched a guy on Bassmaster Live yesterday, and he had a fish in his hand for so long that I just was feeling so like a fish isn't a prop. A fish is like a living, breathing thing. It's like, get a great shot of it, great video clip, and don't get me wrong, I've had fish out of the water too long, and I've worked very hard to get better at that. But I just like, if I can help the younger generation a little bit with their fish handling, then I think that's worthwhile,
Yeah, 100%. And that's actually something Andy, my co-host, and I have been brainstorming. We were taking a good amount of time to set it up, because we obviously want it to be done right. We want the correct information. We're planning, because every now and then on the show we do panels. I've done a couple of them so far. I've done a college bass fishing one, kind of try to help be a resource for high school anglers trying to come into college bass fishing. I've done a smallmouth panel, which is my absolute favorite, because that was like 2 hours straight of talking smallmouth, and happiest I've been ever. But we've been talking about a fish care panel where we're just talking about handling fish. Obviously, it's going to be more geared towards bass, but obviously the things that we talk about can be universal for handling fish in general. So that people can get a better understanding, because No, I saw a post the other day from a guy who was fishing down in Florida, and one of his largemouth had died in his live well, and he had mentioned how he should have had a lot of ice in his live wells. And I'm like, those fish are super dark. They must have been very shallow in grass.
Yeah.
Why would you put ice in your live wells? You're just going to shock the heck out of those fish. I mean, I feel like there's like different misconceptions and such.
Oh, there's a lot of theories too, and that's the tough part. Like I'm fishing a walleye tournament this year, and I had fished it last year, and I was told you should definitely put ice in the live well. And then I asked other people that are very reputable tournament anglers. They said, no, don't put ice in the live well. Just make sure the water's circulating nonstop. So it's like you have reputable people on both sides giving you different answers. So that can be tough. And I think, not everyone necessarily has the answer. Like there's a lot of controversial topics in fish handling. Are you familiar with fizzing fish?
Yeah. I live in between two of the Great Lakes. And
Yeah. So for you guys that don't know, fizzing fish is putting a needle in its air bladder, and it's releasing the pressurized air, like when you bring up a fish from really deep water.
Right.
So there's been studies where those fish have been caught again and they're healthy, and there's also been studies where those fish just end up dying a couple weeks later because you popped a hole in their air bladder. So it's just there's been studies on both sides. So it's those type of topics make it very difficult,
Yeah, no, 100%. Because that's so tough. Because like you want to pursue these fish, but especially somebody who truly cares, like. You do not want to see them be injured. Like obviously you would love to catch them. You love the fight. You love the pursuit of chase, and you love to be able to, at the end of the day, just get them out of the water for 15 seconds, 20 seconds max, take a picture, release them.
Yeah.
And my buddy Jeff Hipper and I, we fished a tournament probably a month back on Lake Ontario, and we had caught a fish, very deep water.
Yeah.
And we went to release it. It looked like at first she swam down fine.
Yeah.
We usually try to release them without fizzing because, like you said, sometimes you can damage them.
Yeah.
To see if they'll swim down on their own. It looked like she did. Well, we went to go drift again, and she was floating on the surface.
Mm.
We spent probably, I want to say, 15 minutes getting her back down. She finally successfully swam down. But that's the last thing you want to see is a fish swimming at the surface, because that is the most gut-wrenching feeling, knowing that that's because of you.
Yeah.
Because you love the game you chase so much. So it's like you want to learn as much as you can how to keep them alive, so that once again they can keep living and obviously keep putting off offspring, so therefore you can keep catching these fish.
Yeah.
Really love. So like you mentioned, though, it's tough and it's so difficult because there's so many different theories, right?
Even when you do everything right, even when the water's cold and you're fishing shallow water and all of this stuff, fish still die. And it's just like, if you don't want to kill any fish, don't go fishing, because you are going to kill fish. You're going to hook a fish in the tongue, or you're going to accidentally gut hook a fish, and you're going to kill a fish, and that's part of it. And I saw a lot of stuff guiding. There was times where a big pike would inhale a lure, and by the time he got to the boat, the fish was almost dead. And it's like, okay, guys, we can eat this large pike, or we can let it float to the bottom and bonk the next one that comes in and eat that one. But I'm like, it may be weird to eat a big fish, but then we're killing one less fish. And it's just like, it's fishing. You're putting hooks in animals' mouths. Like it's going to happen regardless if you're doing everything perfect or not. But you may as well stack the odds in your favor if you can, right? So. Right.
No, 100%. And then it's, talking about depths is something that's super interesting when it comes to fish care, because like you just mentioned, you might do everything right. You might not even do anything, and they might just still die. Like I had a buddy on the St. Lawrence River that caught one very, very deep.
Yeah.
And brought it up to the surface, and it was like almost dead as he brought it in the boat. Because it's almost like because there's certain fish at certain depths where if you fight them too fast, or you bring them up too fast, or even if they just, because smallmouth, they're notorious for once you hook them, they shoot straight up.
Yeah.
They might have just killed themselves swimming up, and you could have done nothing about it whatsoever.
But you could have been shallower then.
Right. It's like it's at that point. Do you just not even pursue them at those depths?
Yeah.
It's
tough. Tournaments are tough too, because people are going to go to any lengths that they need to, and
when money's involved, 100%. Yeah. If someone knows that there's a 30-pound bag sitting in 65 foot of water, they're going to go to 65 foot of water and make it open.
Yeah, it's not like you can make that a rule. It's not like, anglers can't fish below 65, because how do you govern that, right?
Right, 100%. That's super tough, but no, that's a great point, and it's good to see that these thoughts are not floating around in just a small group of people. It's widespread. It's great to see not only that, but also at least here in the States. And I'm not familiar. You could probably touch on this when it comes to Canada. But our wildlife and fisheries, the majority of our states do a very good job and have great efforts at trying to help make a better experience, not just for anglers and such, but for these fish to make sure that they're living a better life. So how is that in Canada? Because I know what we have here, but
yeah, things are good. I mean, we don't have the same population density, so I don't think we necessarily have the same resources.
Right.
Like, I think there should be more conservation officers going around checking people and that sort of stuff. But just we're like Manitoba, for example, the people are so spread out. Like there's probably, more people in, the suburbs of Minneapolis, or definitely more in Minneapolis than all of Manitoba probably, right? So it's just like, you don't have the same resource. You don't have the same license dollars. Like there's so many more fishermen per square mile in Minnesota, right? Manitoba, everything's spread out. So it's just instantly, it's like, you have conservation officers that are patrolling massive areas, and you wish there could be more, but it's tough with resources and everything, right? So
yeah,
I think they're doing the best that they can, but can you always do better? Yes, absolutely. So
right, yeah. I'm curious. So the lakes that you naturally, that you populate most, right? The lakes that you visit the most.
Yep.
Obviously, our lakes here, they get crushed during certain parts of the season. What would you say, on average, maybe let's say a season? Do your lakes get pressured at all, or do you not normally see many people at your lake?
There's lakes that I could go to, like some lakes that I fished with my kayak this year, and I did a smallmouth bass show on a small little lake with my kayak, and I bet you that lake was fished probably maybe less than 10 times this year. I don't know, by anyone. Like there's lakes that I know I could go fish right now, and I could guarantee you I wouldn't see people on them. Like Lake of the Woods is in my backyard, and Lake of the Woods has a lot of lodges on it, but there's thousands of small lakes around here, and I'd be surprised if I saw, boats on half of them, It's pretty phenomenal. Yeah, we're very spoiled up here. If you're willing, especially ice fishing, if you're willing to go, back into the bush and portage, there's lots of snowmobile trails, you can get so far removed from people. And I mean, every lake's been fished, but you can definitely get to lakes that, you get fished very little. So that's why I love exploring new lakes around here, because you never know what you're going to stumble onto,
Yeah. Now, I don't need you, because I'm sure you might want to protect location a little bit, but are there any lakes up in, the Lake of the Woods that are very good smallmouth fishing through the ice?
I haven't caught smallmouth through the ice that many times. Like there's lakes. I mean, any lake that has smallmouth, you can crush them through the ice. You just have to know where they're at. And that's another topic that's controversial. It's like, well, how deep are you catching them, right?
Right.
I mean, often they're potted up. So if you find them in the winter, you're going to find tons of them. There's shallower lakes that I think if you catch them through a shallower lake in the winter, it's not a big deal. I think if you're hammering them in 50 or 60 feet of water in the winter, that probably isn't a good scenario, right? But I would say there's lots of lakes around here that you could catch them through the ice. You just got to put in your time to find them. But once you find them, you'd hit them pretty good. Like they're bunched up pretty tight. So
cool. It's always been the Manitoba area. Growing up, I've seen these fishing and hunting shows that I've watched from Manitoba. And it's always been on the back of my mind as like a destination I want to go to. But there's been a few lakes that in Canada specifically that I would love to venture to. Like a good buddy of mine, Morgan Signini, Captain Morgan legend. I don't know if you've seen him on Instagram, but he lives in Canada as well. And we were planning a trip to go to Lake Simcoe. Yeah. As soon as that happens, that's when the borders close. So we're like, and we've been joking every now and then. It's like, the borders open yet? Like, can you smuggle me across? We'll meet halfway on Lake Erie, and we'll get it done somehow. Yeah. But that's always tough. But dude, I have one more question for you before we wrap up tonight. I don't want to keep you for too long. You're a busy man, but my last question for you, I like to ask everybody this that are new to the show. And it's our one and only fun. Like, we don't want to call it a fun question, but if you could invite any three people, whether it be now they're alive, present, or maybe they're alive 600, 800 years ago, if you could sit down with three different people, have a steak, have a beer, and pick their brain, what 3 people are you inviting?
Oh, man. That's a big question.
Yeah.
You must get some pretty good answers on this.
Well, you get some pretty good answers, yeah.
Oh.
And they don't have to be fishing.
No.
They can be anything you'd like. I'm a huge sports junkie, so that's why I like to open it up.
Oh, nice. Al Linder. He's just a legend in the fishing world.
Right.
I feel like Jesus is one you like. How could you not pick Jesus in your top 3? It'd be like, if I could sit down, of course, right?
It'd be interesting if he chugged a beer or sipped casually.
I could see him sipping some wine, for sure. I need a third one. I'm just thinking sports now, but I think like LeBron James would probably be a pretty interesting person to hang around with for a little bit because he's just so dominant, you know?
Right. Yeah. Mindset wise, I think that'd be super interesting.
That's quite the combo. You got Jesus, Al Linder, and LeBron James. I'd like to see those 3 at a table with me. I think that'd be.
I like that. That's pretty sweet, dude.
What's your 3?
My 3. Oh boy. I think I've only had the tables turned on me twice, and of all 100, because that question has been in here 136 episodes. Because episode 1 was just me saying I was starting the podcast.
Yeah.
And that question's only been turned on me twice.
Wow.
Man, it's always easy to ask. I would say first of all, I think The Rock, so Dwayne Johnson.
Nice. That's a good
one. Work because his work ethic is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think also, I don't know if you're a podcast guy, but I listen to the Joe Rogan podcast a lot.
Nice. Yeah.
And he had on, I believe his name was Rocco.
Oh yeah, I've seen Rocco stuff.
He was a Navy SEAL.
Yeah,
they got into the whole presidency, and I'm not a very political person, but he mentioned how The Rock would be a perfect candidate because we don't need somebody who's political, but we need somebody right now who has the capability to listen and be a voice for the people. And he mentioned how The Rock would be great for that, and I really can't think of anybody better than him right now that could fit that role.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's always been somebody inspirational to me. So probably The Rock. Fishing wise, I've always looked up to Brandon Palaniuk. I know I'm sure a lot of people have said that. I've probably listened and watched his Angler of the Year speech like 12 times over. Just because it's kind of motivational to me, but also just kind of hearing his route, his travel.
Yeah.
Just kind of, you can hear the passion and obviously how he's got there. And obviously that's led him to be how good he is right now.
Yeah.
So definitely him. Love to pick his brain. He'd definitely hate me after the first hour of how many questions I'd ask him. And then third one, I'm going sport world. I'm going Bobby Orr.
Nice.
I don't know if you're a hockey guy at all.
Yeah, I know Bobby Orr is.
Yeah, defenseman for the Bruins. For anybody, if you're not a hockey person, he was a defenseman for the Bruins back in 80s, 70s, 80s, something like that.
Yeah.
Basically, I read his biography. He came out with a book, and I read it because I was a defenseman playing hockey growing up, and reading his mindset was pretty awesome. So I have a bunch of questions for him. But yeah, that's probably my 3.
Nice. Right. That's a good 3. Solid 3.
Yeah, I like that.
That was a good question.
Yeah, I appreciate you turning the table around. It doesn't happen often. So thank you for that, man. But yeah, dude, I super appreciate you taking time tonight to sit down and talk with me. I really appreciate it. I wish Andy could have been this. I know he would have loved to ask you a bunch of questions.
We can do it again when he's back.
Heck yeah, man. Of course, we'd love to have you. And then, you have a lot of experience when it comes to fish care, so we'd love to have you join us on that panel if you're free.
Yeah, keep me posted.
Whenever we can get those details together and start that. but man, we appreciate it 100%, and take care. We hope to have you on again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, man.
Cheers.
Have a good night.
You too.
Bye. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed that podcast there. That was absolutely awesome to hear the different stories, not only his story getting into fishing, how he's created what he's he started and built into now with his photography, videography, his YouTube channel. There's so much and so many endeavors that he's embarked on, and you can see just the creativity, the passion that he's instilled within his career. So if you guys haven't already, like I said, if you live under a rock, go down below into the description, follow him on YouTube, look at some of the different projects he's put together. And like he mentioned earlier, I will link down his proposal video because you guys definitely have to see that. And for guys needing ideas, there's a little bit of spark of creativity for you. But thank you guys again for watching and listening. Hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.